Tragedy over the Aegean Sea, May 14th, 2006. Helios Airways Flight 522, Boeing 737-31S. The sun rose over Larnaca International Airport that Sunday morning, painting the Mediterranean sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was supposed to be just another routine flight to Athens, then on to Prague. Just another day at work. But fate had written a different story in the clouds that morning. The crew. Captain Hans-Jürgen Merten, 58 years old, was a man who lived and breathed aviation. A German pilot with over 16,000 flight hours in his logbook, he had spent decades mastering the skies. Colleagues described him as meticulous, careful, perhaps even overly cautious. He had a wife waiting for him back in Cyprus, two grown daughters in Germany, and a grandson he'd only met twice. Hans-Jürgen always carried a photo of little Stefan in his flight bag. "My lucky charm," he'd say with that gentle smile of his. First Officer Pampos Charalambous, just 51, was a proud Cypriot who'd worked his way up through the ranks with determination and grit. With 7,549 hours of flying experience, Pampos knew the routes between Cyprus and Greece like the back of his hand. He was a family man through and through. Married to his childhood sweetheart Maria, father to three beautiful children. That morning, he'd kissed his youngest daughter goodbye, promised he'd be home for her school play the next day. Would he keep that promise? The cabin crew of 4 flight attendants were young, vibrant, full of life. Among them was Andreas Prodromou, 25, a flight attendant who also held a commercial pilot's license with minimal flight hours. Andreas had dreams of becoming a captain someday. He'd been studying, preparing, hoping for his chance to move from the cabin to the cockpit. That day, destiny would give him the most terrible opportunity imaginable. Mashed 121 souls aboard. 115 passengers settled into their seats that morning. Families heading to Athens for vacation. Business travelers with laptops and briefcases. Young couples dreaming of romantic Greek getaways. Among them were children. Innocent, excited children who pressed their faces against the windows, marveling at the wings, at the promise of flight. Nobody knew. How could they know? The Boeing 737 looked perfect, gleaming in the morning sun. The weather was ideal. Everything seemed normal. The chronology of disaster. 9:07 a.m. local time, Helios Flight 522 pushed back from Gate 15. Captain Merten completed his pre-flight checks. Everything appeared nominal. The aircraft had undergone maintenance the night before for a reported pressurization problem. Fixed, they said. All clear, they said. 09:23 a.m., cleared for takeoff. The powerful CFM56 engines roared to life, and the Boeing accelerated down runway 22. At 140 knots, Merten pulled back on the yoke. The aircraft lifted gracefully into the Mediterranean air. Climb out was smooth, textbook perfect. 9:37 a.m., passing through 12,000 feet, the cabin altitude warning horn began to sound. That distinctive, urgent sound. But here's where everything went terribly, tragically wrong. The warning horn for cabin altitude sounds exactly like the takeoff configuration warning. Captain Merten and First Officer Charalambous thought something was wrong with their takeoff configuration. Not that the cabin wasn't pressurizing. Cockpit voice recorder. What's that? The takeoff configuration warning? We're already airborne. Can't be. Must be a malfunction. We'll check it out. But it wasn't a malfunction. The cabin was losing pressure, and they didn't realize it. The pressurization system was still in manual mode from the maintenance work the night before. It should have been switched to auto. It wasn't. And in the confusion of the identical warning sounds, 2 experienced pilots made a fatal mistake. They didn't recognize the real danger screaming at them. 40 a.m., Nicosia Air Traffic Control noticed something odd. ATC, Helios 522, Nicosia Control, how do you read? Silence. Helios 522, Nicosia Control, do you copy? Static. Then a strange labored breathing sound. Was someone struggling to breathe? 40 m, the aircraft continued climbing to its assigned altitude of 34,000 feet. But at those altitudes, without pressurization, the human brain has only seconds of useful consciousness. The partial pressure of oxygen is too low. Hypoxia, the silent, insidious killer, was taking over the cockpit. At 18,000 feet, passengers would have noticed something wrong. Lightheadedness, confusion. Why weren't the oxygen masks dropping? By 25,000 feet, most would have been unconscious. By 30,000 feet, 10:05 a.m., Greek Air Force F-16 fighters scrambled. Two jets intercepted the wayward Boeing as it entered Greek airspace, flying on autopilot like a ghost ship in the sky. The fighter pilots pulled alongside, looked into the cockpit windows. F-16 pilot radio transmission. The captain is slumped over the controls. The first officer is also down. I see someone in the cabin. Looks like he's trying to enter the cockpit. It was Andreas Prodromou, the young flight attendant with his small amount of pilot training. Somehow, he'd managed to get a portable oxygen bottle and remain conscious longer than the others. Could he save them? Could this young man, with his limited experience, perform a miracle? The final battle. Andreas burst into the cockpit and found a nightmare. Both pilots unconscious, maybe already gone. The aircraft flying itself, fuel running low. He grabbed the controls with trembling hands. His training had never prepared him for this. He had maybe 40 hours of flight time. He'd never flown a 737. He'd never landed a jet aircraft. But he had to try. He had to. 10:49 a.m., the left engine flamed out. Fuel starvation. The aircraft was flying on autopilot for hours, consuming fuel, going nowhere useful. The Boeing shuddered. Andreas radioed, his voice desperate, breaking. Mayday! Mayday! This is Helios 522. Both pilots are... I need help. But his transmission was weak, broken. Did anyone hear? Could anyone guide him? 11:05 a.m., the right engine quit. Both engines silent. The only sound now was the wind screaming past the fuselage and Andreas's own terrified breathing. The autopilot disconnected. The Boeing began to descend. 34,000 feet. 30,000. 25,000. Andreas fought with the controls. He tried. God, how he tried. But a powerless 737 gliding with mountains below and no engines and a cabin full of unconscious passengers. What could one brave, undertrained young man do against such impossible odds? The end. A Lelate 522 impacted a hillside near Grammatico, Greece at high speed. The explosion could be heard for miles. Debris scattered across the rocky terrain. Fire consumed everything. All 121 souls perished. Captain Hans-Jürgen Merten never saw his grandson again. First Officer Pampos Charalambous never made it to his daughter's school play. Andreas Prodromou, the brave flight attendant who fought until the very end, never got his chance to become the captain he dreamed of being. And those passengers? Those families? Those children with their faces pressed against the windows? They were gone. All gone, the truth revealed. Investigators found the pressurization switch still in manual mode. One switch. One simple oversight during maintenance. Combined with identical warning sounds and the insidious nature of hypoxia, it created a perfect storm of tragedy. The Greek Air Accident Investigation Board concluded. The pilots simply didn't recognize they were losing cabin pressure until it was too late. By the time hypoxia affected their judgment, they couldn't save themselves. Could it have been prevented? Yes. Should those maintenance procedures have been clearer? Absolutely. Should warning systems be better designed? Without question. But none of that brings back 121 people who boarded a plane on a sunny Sunday morning expecting to land safely in Athens. Let's talk about this. This tragedy haunts aviation professionals to this day, but it also led to critical safety improvements. The industry learned, changed, evolved. That's the only silver lining in such darkness. Questions for you. Have you ever experienced a scary moment during a flight? Share your story in the comments below. Do you think aviation is safer today because of lessons learned from tragedies like this? What would you have done in Andreas Prodromou's position? Could anyone have saved that flight? If this story moved you, please like this video. It helps us share these important stories with more people. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our documentary-style aviation stories. We honor the memories of those lost by telling their stories with respect and accuracy. Comment below. What aviation disaster should we cover next? Your suggestions guide our content. Share this video with anyone interested in aviation, safety, or true stories of courage in the face of impossible odds. These weren't just statistics. They were people, fathers, mothers, children, dreams cut short. By remembering them, by learning from what happened, we honor their memory and make the skies safer for all of us. Thank you for watching. Fly safe. Remember them. This documentary is dedicated to the 121 victims of Helios Airways Flight 522. May their memory inspire continued vigilance in aviation safety.